All right, we're back. Another episode, Rush Hour podcast. We've been recording a few of these here and there. I wouldn't say slow week in tech news, but not exactly the most exciting, but still a couple
Yeah.
of worthy things. I don't know. What do you want to start with, Just?
We had talked about maybe starting with Reddit, but actually, did you come across that Alibaba model that was shared yesterday, where they can
No.
now take a photo? There's this new model that came out, and they can now add video, music, even like rapping to any static photo.
Oh no, I haven't seen that.
Yeah, so it's like it's called Alibaba Emo. I don't know. If you hadn't heard that specifically, we can maybe
No,
sell
what
it.
is?
But it's
So
just
how
like,
does it work?
so basically, like any static image, and I'm not sure if it's just developers have access now or if everyone can have access, but it's through, I guess, Alibaba's, AI or LLM team, and any static image they can now overlay, like an audio file of a person singing or talking or whatever, and make that image like come to life essentially.
Oh wow.
Yeah, it's actually like pretty fascinating and awesome.
Oh man.
It's kind of like what we've been talking about, over the last few episodes. The pace of AI, generative AI, and capabilities and innovation. It's kind of mind-boggling, man. Before I felt like it was once a month. Now I feel like it's every other day. It's just the speed is wild. Is there anything else
Yeah.
that you've seen that's been kind of interesting?
No, not a ton actually. I was thinking Nvidia was something we should talk about, which we will. But otherwise, it's been pretty cool. Web3 is making some noise.
Oh, yeah, you got to talk about that maybe a little bit now. I mean, my bags, I was hodling for a while now, and it seems to be paying off a bit. I may sell some alts, that are kind of climbing back from when I was really just in a dark place on those. But what are your thoughts on the market? Yeah, because
Yeah, I mean
yeah,
it's definitely on its way back. I mean, Bitcoin itself is up what 62K. Ethereum is kind of like drafting off of it, and it is up.
yeah,
On in the Web3 space, some of the protocols are really ramping up and scaling up. The Lens protocol, I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, but they are a Web3 social protocol, and they announced, I think, on Monday that they're now permissionless, meaning you don't need an invite. It's unlocked. Anyone can now use it. You know, Before it was invite only because
yeah,
everything is done on the blockchain. It's costly. You got to mint a profile. All your actions are logged in a blockchain. So, it's costly, and they weren't sure how it scales. And then this week, after whatever, a year and a half of being sort of in beta, it is now unlocked. So a bunch of people that were dying to try out Web3 can now just link their existing wallet. They'll
yeah.
create you a profile, and then your social following that you get stays with you. So that's kind of an interesting play. I mean, that seems to be the future of all
Yeah.
this stuff. You can imagine a world where, when you're going between, in Web 2, when you're going between Twitter and Instagram and YouTube, you have different followings. Imagine
Right.
you owning them all being the same, and when you leave one and
Yes.
start another, your following stays with you. All of that is doable now on the blockchain, right? I think
Wow.
it's a matter of adoption to the new, it's got to have the tools and all the things, right? I feel like once all of that is kind of built out, it's
Yeah.
going to be a no-brainer to leave X and Twitter or Instagram to go to one of those, because you own your data and all of the algorithms and things like that. You get to own them. You get to craft them and curate them.
So it's basically just apps are then created on top of that. So like,
Right.
if you're a YouTube creator, like you need VOD capability,
Right.
right? So that you can
Right.
create that there. So they have all the apps and tools, but then you can take it. Okay,
So
interesting.
so yes, it's the protocol. It's the layer that sits. It's the infrastructural layer of Web3 that's sitting on top of it, which is creating all of the things that everyone else will want to do. Will sit on top of it. So imagine you're taking the first step in creating a overall profile, and then companies will build, like a company I work for, Orb is building a sort of Instagram and Twitter style social app that lives on there, which huge advantages to being on the protocol because every profile has a wallet. So you can imagine you don't have to leave Twitter to make a purchase. You don't have to leave Instagram to make a purchase. You can buy a video. You can link the merch. You can link the NFT. You can link the whatever, the follow, the donation. All of it lives right in your profile. So big advantages for everyone. I think it's a matter of is there sort of a killer app or killer feature? Is the ecosystem ready for everybody? But like that stuff's coming. Like it's a matter of
that's cool.
And Ethereum and all these. Ethereum is really going to be the coin that probably powers everything, and that's obviously backed by Bitcoin. So like the Bitcoin Ethereum going up and these things like sort of coalescing.
It's all bullish signs.
Yeah, that's where we're kind of headed, which is as we talk about Reddit, like it's kind of interesting, right? Because the Web2 stuff is still developing and coming out, and like how that adapts to Web3 is going to be interesting. I think we're a little ways away, but like you can see it work. That's where the future is because the problem is like how do you monetize? You have this massive following and now you can't leave and you're sort of chained to your platform. Well, what if we undo all of that? What happens then? Right?
Totally. I mean, it's been like so many people get removed from platforms or they get hacked or whatever it is. And before it was like, hey, make sure you get everybody's email, right? Like if you don't have someone's email, you're not going to be able to connect with them. So this seems kind of like the next version of like the power that gives you as you're kind of building a brand and able to maintain your audience and bring them with you like regardless of platform. So I mean it seems like that would be the future. Like that would be the best type of product for creators. I know we're doing a bit of speed round on news. One thing that I was reminded of as we're talking about crypto, I don't know if you saw, but Telegram recently said they're going to be working with Tron in order to I think deliver payments like through an ad network that they're going to be creating on Telegram to be able to allow people to monetize their Telegram followings as well, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah, I mean Telegram is probably the preferred crypto platform. Discord not as big for crypto. I think Telegram seems to be the number one. Community, so it'll be interesting. Reddit obviously is a big one too. In general, I think there are so many niche communities in Reddit that have really taken a cult following. Yeah.
Well, maybe that's a good segue into Reddit, which is kind of one of the bigger stories happening right now. So maybe I'll do a bit of an overview and then we can kind of jump into some of the topics. So Reddit, I think the plan is for it to IPO soon. I think either in March or early April. The company has been around obviously, a really long time, had founders, start the company, then it was acquired and then, went back into the founders' hands. It's been around. Do you know how many years Reddit has existed now? It's got to be like 10 plus years, something like that.
Yeah, it's definitely over 10. I want to say 11 or 12. I mean, it started at, of course, my alma mater, UVA.
Yep.
Alexis Ohanian started it in the library at UVA in Waffle House. So, it's been a while. I want to say at least 10 years, if not 12.
So I think the valuation right now, the range they're circling is around $5 billion, which I think is down from maybe at a time it was around 10. Now listen, we were in the ZERP era of all these kind of low interest rates and everything. Like a lot of valuations have come down, maybe to right size a bit. So we'll see what that is. Maybe that's in the right range. But it looks like year over year growth for the platform was about 20% last year. They seem to have about 75 maybe. They actually have a pretty large kind of like pretty even split between logged in, logged out, and I think we could talk about that a bit in terms of how you count DAU and the value of users who are logged in, logged out.
Yeah, maybe walk the if someone's not into this space like we are, talk about like what is a DAU? I've that's been in my language for 10 plus years, but like for someone who's just getting into this,
sure,
what is a DAU?
So I think one of the interesting things about DAU is every company kind of looks at it a little differently, at least in my experience. And so at the most basic level, what you can think of a DAU is like a user of a platform, right? And do they come in on a single day? So when companies talk about their DAU, they're talking about how many people are on their platform interfacing with it, on a single day, and then kind of their average DAU would be like, well, what does that average look like, on any given day? And the reason why companies have different ways of measuring DAU or like the value of a specific DAU is because you can have different types of active users. You can have active users who don't require an account. So for Twitch or Reddit, for example, you didn't necessarily need an account to view content on there, right? You would be a non-logged in user, but that could still be a DAU. You can have a registered user. So this is someone who, has an account, or you have some information on, just give me their email or maybe set up some information about themselves on the platform. You can have, DAU is daily active user, but like that, maybe that person at a specific company that's a registered user is just a daily user, but a daily active user is someone who's watched content for a specific amount of time, right? So at Discord or at Twitch, for example, you had to engage or use a platform for a specific amount of time for you to be considered an active user. And the reason why this is important is because there's different value assigned to a user based off of their kind of registration status or their activity. Obviously, a user who is and even monetization as well, right? Because there could be daily active users who kind of monetize in some ways. You can kind of build out a whole funnel of these users, and the value, they can have different value that's attributed to the organization based off of their kind of logged in, logged out, or engagement status. So I go deeper in any one of those, and I know you can as well. But hopefully that's somewhat of a helpful overview for folks who are just trying to understand what that means.
Yeah, it's essentially like the key term there's daily active user, right? Like an active is obviously a term that can be defined depending on the company, but you think how many people actually use the site every day is the best way to look at it. Now, whether or not it's registered or logged in, anonymous, all that stuff is sort of is it a bot? Mm-hmm. Like all those things are kind of in question, but for the most part, like,
desktop,
how many people use the site every day?
Yeah. Different channels as well.
And you said for the most part, year over year, growing.
Year over year was growing. It's at like 20%. I think they saw like during that COVID period, so the period between 2019 and 2021, meteoric growth. When we were at Twitch, it was kind of the same thing. People were looking for stuff to do at home, and they were able to connect, and these social platforms really blew up during that time. And that pulled forward growth a lot more than maybe what would have happened naturally. And so like a lot of times those companies raised and the valuations were higher because the perception was maybe they would continue that growth trajectory. We kind of know what happened. A lot of them didn't necessarily sustain that, which is why valuations came down a little bit. But I think they were still, still meaningful growth. It looked like number of logged in users in millions in 2023 was around 48 billion. I think that's like on a daily. I think it's on a daily active. I'm just taking a look at when I log. We'll maybe throw this up on the actual video once we post this. But
do you personally use it, Reddit?
I do. I don't use it necessarily every day, but I do use it. I typically go to popular and just kind of read through, what's going on that day. Like a lot of interesting, kind of fun posts and content, and then I'll also use it if I'm doing research on a specific company, and let's say I want to understand, hey, what's going on with like at Instagram now for employees, right? You could go to Quora, you go to some other place, but I'll go to Reddit and say, and try to look at the posts from kind of current employees who are there and kind of get a sense of what the vibe and what the culture is. I feel like that's a pretty authentic source to do it. So it's either kind of what's going on in the internet that day, or I'll use it as a way of kind of learning more about companies. What about you? Do you use it?
I mean, I don't use it every day, but yeah, I'm similar. Like if there's something I want to dig deep in, I'll go into Reddit and sort of dig for a subreddit of a certain thing. and go that way. But as far as like finding an active community and doing it every day, I haven't done that yet. I know a lot of people do. They're like, hey, I'm deep in the New York Knicks Reddits, and that's where my community is or whatever. But I haven't found that yet. Not to say I wouldn't. I could see it happening. I just haven't done it with Reddit for whatever reason. I think because the things I'm into have specific sites built for it. So it's and then Twitter obviously is more and more bite sized. But like I've always found Reddit to be like, I don't know. I guess my initial gut is like, it's like 2 steps away from like a 4chan underground. Like I don't know. I've always
but the fact that it hasn't gotten there makes me feel like I can spend time. But yeah, you're right. Yeah. It's always felt like really close.
A little deeper than I want to go. Like sometimes, so I tend not to get down that rabbit hole. I like to keep it, for the most part, like one level up from where Reddit tends to go. But I do like it. It's great. Like the information on there is awesome. People are, the AMAs are amazing.
The AMAs are definitely. Yeah, they're definitely great. It's interesting that you talk about, the analogy with, they're a few steps away from 4chan, or you don't really know necessarily what could happen to it down the line. I think that's actually one of the primary critiques on the company as it comes up to an IPO, because they have this incredibly large moderator community that really kind of understands the community really well, but they're not necessarily compensated to do any of that work. And I think it seems like one way they're trying to get at this is offering shares to mods and to some of the members of the larger community, which I think is actually a good thing to do, try to keep the interests aligned. But how do you think of that as like a risk for the company down the line in terms of, long-term success? Do you think that this model kind of works within a public market type of model, or what do you think about that?
I mean, I definitely think that's a huge risk. They're so reliant on user-generated moderation and content in general. It just seems like if the mind share shifts, and they had a little run there. I think there was a underground swelling of like let's protest Reddit for a couple days. I think that happened earlier last year, and a bunch of people took a couple days off from Reddit. And I know that back to the Web3 thing, there are now communities being built with wallets attached to them, and those wallet, everything that gets sold and marketed, sponsored, all that goes into a community wallet, and the moderator controls that wallet, so they can get paid. So, like I said, I think the tools are coming to sort of disrupt this, but the scale that Reddit has is incredible, and the reach. They have every subreddit imaginable, so I don't think it's going anywhere. I think it's gonna adapt to. I think it's really good at finding a niche and finding a community within that niche. It's like brilliant when it comes to that.
Do you think you'll be investing like once they IPO? By the way, none of this is financial advice, but just curious.
I don't know.
What do you think?
I thought about it. I'll probably put a little bit into it just to support it. I'm not going to put a ton. Maybe like $1,000 or something like that. I generally like stuff I like and use that I think has potential. I'll put it in, especially if it's like a product that I'm like, hey, this has got some potential. I can see this going somewhere. I usually my start like $500 to $1,000 is kind of where I start. And then I just kind of let it go. I
think that makes sense.
Things and some horrible things for me. So.
I think that makes sense. I've gotten more boring over time with like some of my investing stuff, because I feel like where I've done I've had one crazy outside success, which was basically my wife saying, hey, we should put a bunch of money in Tesla like in 2018. I think it was in maybe the 300s or something like that. I was like, all right, she had just got out of business school. She was like, you got to understand, this is not a car company. This is about, energy and battery play and everything. I was like, okay, that kind of makes sense. And that has just been phenomenal. But a lot of the other individual stocks, it's hard for me to pick. So I'm kind of boring, man. Outside of like a few stocks, I'll just do, ETFs. I do like a Vanguard 500 ETF, and maybe some like tech forward-ish ETFs where I get a collection of companies. But in terms of individual stocks, let's see, I got Tesla, Coinbase. I had Nvidia, but I sold it during that 2021 where they kind of went down 40%, and obviously that was not the right move. And then I sold Meta around that time as well. That's when I was doing performance marketing stuff, and I was like, I don't know, man. I don't think Meta. Well, not that it can be successful, but it just looked really dire for the industry then. Never bet against Zuck. So I still got them, within the collection of the ETF stuff, but individual stocks, I don't know. I try to. And Amazon. I got Amazon as well.
Yeah, I don't go crazy. I don't go crazy either. Like, yeah, I definitely have Amazon because of our time at Twitch. I got lucky. I mean, my strategy has always been like, not to dovetail into strategies, but I've like thought about what is America great at in terms of companies, and it came down to like content and distribution of content. So like I kind of built my own little like portfolio of Disney and Disney being like making content, and Sony and Paramount and Universal, like those. I got a bunch of those, and then I was like, all right, like distribution wise, Apple and Google and some of those. I was like, all right, I'm gonna sort of place my bet, Comcast and all of those. I kind of like said, all right, wherever you're gonna make content and distribute it, I'm going to invest in that. That's done really well for me. I also
that makes sense.
Tesla. I like the car. Actually, I did the reverse. It was funny. Like when they announced the Model S, I was like, man, that car is sick. And instead of like putting money down on the car, I said, I'm gonna put 1,000 into the stock. And it was like $20 at the time. So yeah, I did all right.
Oh man,
yeah. I did.
Have you sold any?
The best, that it's probably my best story. So I took the $1,000 when I was 20. It grew to 50 or 60K. I took enough out to buy the car. So I bought my Tesla for $1,000, and then I still had like $1,500 in there, and then that grew to another, I think 10 grand or something like that. So when we traded for another Tesla. So I used that money again. I sold a little bit more, and then I still have like 20 grand left in the stock.
Oh man!
Now 2 Teslas from $1,000. So that's my favorite story of investing.
Clip it.
But
Clip it.
A lot of bad. I've had a lot of bad.
No. Fair enough. But I love that. That's such a good strategy. That's like a really.
I remember I told Dash about that when we were at Tag. He's like, "What are you doing? What do you think?" I was like, "Yo, I had this. I really wanted a Tesla, and I put my money in. I showed him. I'm like, look, I can almost buy a Tesla with it." He was dying. He was like, "Yo, that's brilliant. I should have done that."
I know. Oh man, I love that story.
I like thinking about like what I'm about to buy, and thinking, "Oh, this is really cool. I'm just gonna buy the stock."
Totally.
A lot of times that works well, especially with like our kids as they're getting older, like what they're really into. It's kind of like, let's look in, like same with like Fortnite. Looking like this is an incredible game. Who owns it? Can I invest in it? What are the things around it? Like stuff like that. I feel like is a lot of fun to like really look into. When the sneaker phase, like early on, I was like, all right. Nike's really doing stuff. Things are selling. I'm going to go buy the stock, and that did really well for me. And same with Adidas. Like, Adidas seems to be on the come up. Let me buy some of their stock and sell. Buying, kind of like following the trends before their trends.
How do you stay tapped into that? So for someone who's trying to execute a similar type of strategy, or at least like understand your thinking, like what are the things that you're doing that allow you to kind of be savvy and understand when the right time is to do that?
A lot of it is like, ear to the streets, so to speak, right? Because if you're into sneakers, you're buying things, you see the release calendar because you're trying to buy sneakers, but you're seeing, hey, yo, these things are selling out really quickly, and I'm seeing people, flipping them for a lot of money, and like seeing a trend there was like, oh man, I bet the next quarter is going to do really well. So like you can get in there and like you can kind of place bets, and then same with like when Adidas, I started seeing them collaborating, like announcing collaborations early with a lot of like really interesting influencers and
Yep.
designers, and then ultimately landing Kanye. So I was like, okay, I like this. I'm gonna invest in Adidas because it feels right. And then when same deal. Like if you keep your ear to the content, you'll notice Yeezy's kind of losing it. I'm gonna sell, right? Like it's the
Yeah.
same kind of thing. Like with Nike too. If you've seen, hey, these new shoes, they don't look good. They're not selling. They're sitting in stores. They're going on sale. Maybe I should sell. Like the new stuff isn't selling. And John Morant gets arrested and KD's having issues. Da, 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 da. Like those are all signs for you as an investor as well as a consumer to be like, you know what? I haven't bought a real new Nike sneaker in a while. This is probably not a good sign. Should
Yeah.
I invest? Like those are conversations that you should be thinking about from an investment standpoint as well, right? Like so, I just kind of take my consumerism and then translate it into like investment thoughts.
No, I love that. I think that makes complete sense. And to your point, like you got to stay on top of the market. And the thing is, well, people will come to learn that you're really into sneakers and apparel and stuff like that. And people learn more of that, more on that about
Yeah,
you.
like
But like you got to be interested. You actually like have to
yeah,
kind of know
exactly. I
what's
think
happening.
mean
Yeah.
for me, it's like if you're naturally interested in something, that's useful. You can use that information for your own investing. Like my wife is the same. Like she's really into Disney, and when she's like looking at research and stuff, I'll decide whether we should buy more Disney stock or not, right? Because she'll be like, "Hey, I saw, should we go to the expo things?" And she'll be like, "Here's all the stuff that's coming out. This stuff looks really good," and da da da. So, or it's like, "Oh, I don't like the direction of these live action things," and same deal, right? Like, as a
Yep.
consumer of content, you can kind of take a look. Same with Netflix and some of these others. If you're watching a lot of Netflix, you're like, man, Squid Games is great, and this is great, and
Yeah.
yeah, you can invest on that. It's a little bit more. It's risky in the end, regardless. But at least you're going into it with like, hey, I'm doing it because I see these things, and I really like the direction, so I'm gonna invest. Or the
Totally.
other way around.
Totally.
I'm gonna sell
Yeah.
because I don't like the direction of this thing.
That's kind of how I felt about Amazon for a long time. Like, I will never sell Amazon until I'm like, I can't live without this. I cannot, especially with these kids, man. I could not live without Amazon and like being able to, order stuff. So the moat that they've created, I'm saying, and then how it impacts my daily life. I feel like kind of, it makes me feel more assured that that's
Yeah,
going to be
I mean,
have staying power.
sometimes you're blinded by things too because you're in your little bubble. But like Target was another one. When I moved out here and from the East Coast was Walmart. Came out here and I'm like, oh, Target. Like Target was really making a move out west, and I was like, all right, the stores look better, things are going better. And then I went home for like the holidays, and I saw Target going up, and it was cleaner, and people were like, I kind of like Target. I'm like, oh, it's time to start thinking about investing in a Target because it's sort of making its way. So stuff like that. Also, I feel like it's really useful. Like where you shop, where you go, where do you hearing chatter of people talking like daily things. I think it makes a huge difference. It makes a
Totally.
huge difference. Yeah.
This is somewhat of a tangent, but I'll tell you one thing, man. If they had, if Raising Cane's, that's not a public. It's not public, right?
No, it's not.
If they went public, man, I would buy so much of that because I love that chicken so much. I remember when I first visited my brother out of UVA, and we went there. I was like, oh my god, this place exists, and the chicken and the sauce. I was like, oh god, I got to figure out a way. I got to bring this back to Jersey or something.
And they're opening one right here in Hayward. Like
Really? Oh my!
Yes.
All right, we're going.
right where we had that Mexican food, right
Yeah,
there.
yeah, yeah. Okay, one of the next times that we
Yeah,
get
when it
together with
opens,
Tom, we got to go.
For sure going there.
I'm getting the merch. I'm doing everything. I'm definitely getting the merch.
Yeah, Shake
I'm-
Shack is another one, right? Shake Shack, when they IPO'd, it's like, hey, if you love their burgers and you think you and your friends all love, that's like a really good sign for you to be like,
yeah, it's a good signal. Yeah.
Yeah,
Especially, and
like
you kind of stress tested it, but you're like, all right, well, these are the times when I've had an inkling that it's about to pop. Like you've been right, and you don't necessarily. I know it doesn't necessarily always work, but if you are willing to put, a little bit of money to get some skin in the game, I think that's good. I think that's kind of how you should be doing some of that more kind of
and
individual
you don't have
equities
to like
investing.
take out a mortgage or something. I mean, I'm talking like a few $100, man. It's not. This is
Yeah,
nothing
yeah, yeah.
crazy. Just say, hey,
For
look,
sure.
I'm gonna put $100. I'm gonna put $1,000. I'm gonna put whatever you can. Put it in there and see what happens. It's fun. Like, and it gets
Yeah,
you
I
in, you
agree.
get in the game, and you kind of like think about things differently.
I
I
agree.
always try to tell my
Definitely. I know we kind of went on a tangent from the Reddit stuff, which I actually think was really good because I think we covered a lot of like kind of interesting,
random
fun stuff.
things.
Yeah, of how we think. But just to kind of cover off on the last thing that I thought was kind of interesting about the Reddit piece was that they started to license their data to AI firms in order to help train LLMs, and that's becoming kind of like a new revenue generating model for them. And I think it was like 6 to 10 million that they had made recently, but I imagine that's going to be a bigger part of their kind of revenue and business. And actually, if I were to be bullish on them, that would be kind of the main piece in terms of them being able to license that out and monetize that data because it is incredibly valuable for the LMs. But kind of curious how you think about these other companies like the Tumblrs of the world, Reddit's, like, even Twitter, X, like companies that can kind of sell their data as a way to train these platforms, and how it you know, basically how it's kind of interacting with the old AI trends and the space generally.
Yeah, I find that's where it's very scary, because all of the data that you're pumping into this being sold, and the company on the company level, they're able to profit, and you as a user feel like, what do I get out of it? You know what I mean? Like, it just feels like we're being used and abused. Like, I've given you all of this data. It kind of ties back to what we talked about earlier, which is like owning your data and
Yeah.
having a decentralized platform where I mean, that just seems like where we're going to go, right? The more this happens, like, people are going to catch on and be like, I don't want to, you know what? I don't want to do this anymore.
Or I at least want to be compensated for it.
Yeah,
I want my data to live on some blockchain. And if Reddit is using my data, they use to train an LLM, I get a little, I see some money show up in my bank account at the end of the month because that transaction is
Right.
yeah.
It seems like that's where we'll go, and it's probably going to take something like relatively big for it to happen. But I think most people are going to catch on and be like, "I'm not okay with this. My data is worth something. I don't want to just give it to anybody. I want to own it."
Yeah.
So we'll see. I do think every company seems to be circling around community a lot, and I think Reddit and X and all of these companies have done a good job of sort of creating products that build communities. They're definitely onto something, right? Like, you always think about, like, hey, my customers, my user base, whatever. You want to ultimately turn them into a community that can sustain on its own. And these companies that are doing it, I think, are incredibly valuable. So
Totally. But think about what Reddit's been able to do. I mean, they had a lot of like ups and downs. I think what has kept the staying power has been the community and how effectively they created that. So I totally agree.
And the thing that's great is empowering users. Really, I mean, that they haven't truly innovated on UI and apps and all that. I mean, it hasn't been a ton. It's really like users creating communities that they love, and then they are the ones sort of managing it, moderating it, and owning it, which is puts all the onus on the community.
Yeah. What else is going on? Anything else you want to talk about today?
I think how much time do we have? We could do NVIDIA next time.
Yeah, you want to lead it and we could talk about it a little bit?
I mean, obviously, there's all this chatter about NVIDIA being, incredible stock. Earnings are unbelievable. Multi-millionaires of employees is what I hear a lot.
How do you keep people motivated there? Right?
Yeah,
Like somewhat.
Yeah, that is something they said. Multiple, like, middle management of NVIDIA has earned so many millions that they just don't want. Like, they're needing to hire people because people aren't working enough man hours, so they're having to hire another layer of people. and now those people are making enough money that it's like it's pretty interesting. Like they continue to grow and achieve, and you know their CEO even came out. I saw in a few interviews where he said, you know, it's amazing. But all the work we put in, you know, if I was to do it again, I probably wouldn't do it. Which
I saw that.
I find that really fascinating. Like he's just like, you know what, like I went in as a you know naive person, and I came out of this thing jaded, and I don't know if I would do that again. Which I think is very telling for somebody who's like truly changed the lives of so many people. Through just the earnings. But what is your take on Nvidia?
I think well, too late for what?
Like investing
exactly. No, I mean I think you can still invest now and do well. They control about like, you know, 85% of the overall market, and let's say that, you know, they're going to listen. They have a huge share of the pie. There are going to be other companies that come in to try to take some of that, right? I don't know. Like that's just the nature of business, right? When you kind of have these incumbents and they're making a ton of money, other people try to get in that space and they'll start to nibble off of that. But let's say they go down to like 65%. It's still going to be like 65% of an industry that will be in kind of the hundreds of billions of dollars, and
right,
you know, if not trillions of dollars at some point. And they're going to be a primary player in that space. They have all the relationships. They have the kind of manufacturing and logistics relationships with all the suppliers, and they, you know, these chips are like, you know, they have 35,000 components. This is very kind of complex, intricate stuff, and they've been doing it and been able to excel this because of their, you know, past experience in gaming and other industries that require chips that have the same, that have kind of similar, you know, compute kind of requirements as for these AI chips. So they have such a strong position that you could probably still make money. Me, I don't feel like I have, you know. When I owned the stock individually, it was because it was during the time we were at Twitch, and I feel like I just had so much information on what was going on in the gaming space that it just felt like a no-brainer to own them. Right. Now, I'm not sure how quickly other players and incumbents will kind of come in and still share, but I think you could still do well. It's just for me, I don't feel like I have, you know, specific knowledge that gives me like an arbitrage opportunity per se, but it's definitely a major holding in like the other kind of ETFs and stuff that I invested in.
I mean, are they big enough now where if an incumbent starts making traction?
Maybe. I mean, that's a whole, maybe that's for next time. Like that's a whole nother conversation about the regulatory environment we're in and kind of M&A and IPOs. It seems like the markets are still opening up a little bit, but, you know, with the current administration that we have in, they've really put the kibosh on all that activity. If we have some other leadership in, that can change, but I think hypothetically that could happen. I just don't know how, like the timelines or how challenging it would be.
Yeah, it seems. I mean, obviously we have a lot of stuff coming with Apple Vision Pro and chips and form factor and all those things, AI, and there's just a lot of moving parts. But they are definitely a force to be reckoned with. It seems like.
Oh my God. Number 3, you know, they're the third highest kind of market cap after what? Microsoft and Apple. So, and they could, you know, if things continue on the trajectory, they could surpass them. I think that they're like quarterly growth projections are hundreds of billions of dollars, you know, through at least the next fiscal year. So it's pretty wild. I don't think we've seen a company with this kind of impact and trajectory since like Apple during kind of like the iPhone era. Sorry to cut you off.
No, I was just saying they kind of do it behind the scenes, right? It's not one of those things where you're like buying NVIDIA products. They're built into the products that you use. So you need to go, if you're talking about research, you need to go in one step and be like, hey, wait a minute. This product I like, they use NVIDIA, and this product too, and this product, like that, you know, you got to go a little bit deeper, but I feel like that info is out there for us to see for sure.
Definitely. One thing that I'm kind of curious about, I have a little more time left today, but like Apple, where are you at, bro? I mean, I know that they recently, I don't know if you saw the news, I think they recently shut down their kind of auto division or putting that 2,000 person kind of AI group into, I imagine into Syria or into some other stuff they're doing. I'm very curious to see what they've been working on. You would think that they'd be, you know, making more noise now, but that's kind of like the known unknown for me in terms of how they're going to enter the space and what kind of impact they're going to have versus, you know, other players who are making a lot of noise right now.
Yeah, they're kind of a sleeping giant in all of this thing, right? I mean, but since Steve Jobs passed away, it seems like they've struggled to keep that, innovative sort of mindset. But we'll see.
Yeah, I would push back on that. I would push back on that comment a little bit, just to the extent of I think the execution of like the AirPods and like the Apple Watch have actually done really well and are kind of $1 billion brands in their own right. So, I have to give them some. I have to give them some kind of kudos on that. But yeah, like, I mean, we'll have to see what happens with the Vision Pro. You know what I mean? I think ultimately,
it is
consumer adoption of that. Yeah.
You think about like phones now, like they innovated so much, it's hard to continually do that. Like now we're just seeing the difference between 13 Pro and 15 Pro is fair. It's memory, a little bit better camera, like whatever. Like you don't need it. Back in the day, it was like from Apple 1 to 3 was like massive jumps. Now
exponential, totally.
Yeah, now I don't know, and that's kind of a fault of their own, like a monster they created themselves. So from innovating. So we'll see. Yeah, the next step is kind of on them. But anyway, I know you got to jump. Appreciate it today, man.
Yeah, absolutely, brother. And hopefully hit that like and hit that bell. Subscribe to the content.
If you want to hear more. Yeah, for sure. Leave comments on what you guys want to hear.
Yeah, man. And we're gonna do our dinner, so I'm excited about that.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right.